the American fighter that dominated WWII skis, the P-51 Mustang. They called it the plane that won the war. But here's what nobody tells you about the P-51 Mustang. This American fighter was actually a disaster when it first flew. The engine was so bad that British pilots refused to use it in combat. Yet somehow, this rejected aircraft became the most feared fighter in the sky and changed the entire course of World War II. What happened in between is one of the craziest stories you've never heard. The year is 1943. American bombers are getting destroyed over Germany. We're talking hundreds of planes shot down every single week. Thousands of young American airmen are dying because they have no protection deep inside enemy territory. The fighters escorting them simply can't fly far enough. They have to turn back halfway through the mission, leaving the bombers completely defenseless against waves of German fighters. The generals are desperate. The losses are unsustainable. They need a miracle. And that miracle comes from the most unlikely place. A fighter plane that was originally rejected and called worthless. This is the story of how the P-51 Mustang went from complete failure to the aircraft that literally changed the war in Europe. Let me take you back to April 1940. Britain is in serious trouble. France is about to fall. The Nazis are winning everywhere, and the British Royal Air Force is running out of fighters. They're losing planes faster than they can build them, so the British do something crazy. They contact a small American company called North American Aviation and ask them to build a fighter plane. But here's the catch. They need it in 120 days, 4 months, to design and build a completely new fighter aircraft from scratch. Now you have to understand how insane this request was. Building a fighter plane normally takes years. You have to design it, test it, redesign it, test it again. There are thousands of parts that need to work together perfectly. One mistake and pilots die, but the British are that desperate. They're literally fighting for their survival. The president of North American Aviation is a guy named James Kindelberger. Everyone calls him Dutch. And Dutch looks at this impossible deadline and says yes. His team thinks he's lost his mind, but Dutch has a plan. Instead of starting from zero, his engineers study every fighter plane design they can get their hands on. They look at what works and what doesn't. They take the best ideas from German planes, British planes, even their own previous designs, and they work around the clock. The design team is led by a brilliant engineer named Edgar Schmued. This guy is originally from Germany, which is kind of ironic since he's about to design the plane that will help destroy the German Air Force. Schmued makes some radical choices. He uses a laminar flow wing, which is a fancy way of saying the wing is designed to let air flow over it as smoothly as possible. This means less drag and more speed. He also places the radiator under the fuselage in a way that actually creates thrust instead of drag. It's genius engineering. And here's the crazy part, they actually do it. In 117 days, they roll out the prototype, 3 days ahead of schedule. The plane looks beautiful, sleek, aggressive, purposeful. They call it the Mustang. Everyone is excited. The British place an immediate order for 320 aircraft. Finally, they're going to get the fighter they desperately need. But then they actually fly it in combat, and it's terrible. The Mustang has the Allison engine, and this engine has a fatal flaw. It works great at low altitude, but above 15,000 feet, it becomes pathetically weak. And this is a massive problem because bomber escorts need to fly high, really high. German fighters are attacking from above, diving down on the bombers. A fighter that can't perform at high altitude is basically useless for escort missions. British pilots try using the Mustang and they hate it. The plane handles beautifully and it's fast at low level, but when German fighters attack from above, the Mustang can't climb fast enough to intercept them. It can't maintain speed in thin air. Pilots feel like they're flying with one hand tied behind their back. The Royal Air Force relegates the Mustang to low-level reconnaissance missions and ground attack. Basically, the jobs nobody else wants. It's humiliating. Back in America, the Army Air Force looks at the British experience and says no thanks. They don't even want the plane. North American Aviation has created a fighter that nobody wants to use for actual fighting. All that work, all that genius engineering, and the Mustang is a failure. The company is facing financial disaster. The workers who built this plane with such pride are watching it get rejected. It looks like the Mustang is going to be a footnote in history. Just another aircraft that didn't work out. But then something happens that changes everything. There's a British test pilot named Ronald Harker, and Harker is flying the Mustang on a test flight in April 1942. He's impressed by how the plane handles. The visibility is amazing. The controls are responsive. It feels like a winner, except for that awful high-altitude performance. And while he's flying, Harker has an idea. What if they took out the American Allison engine and replaced it with the British Rolls-Royce Merlin engine, the same engine that powers the legendary Spitfire? Harker lands and immediately calls his superiors. He tells them this idea could create the best fighter plane in the world. The Merlin engine is a beast. It has a two-stage supercharger, which means it can compress air even at high altitude, maintaining power where the Allison dies. The British decide to try it. They take 4 Mustangs and retrofit them with Merlin engines. The first flight happens in October 1942, and the results are unbelievable. The Mustang with the Merlin engine is 50 miles per hour faster at high altitude. It can climb like a rocket. It can fight at 30,000 feet or even higher without breaking a sweat. Suddenly, this rejected aircraft has become a monster. Test pilots are stunned. This isn't just good. This is potentially the best fighter plane anyone has ever built. Word reaches America. The Army Air Force, which had zero interest in the Mustang before, suddenly wants to know everything about this new version. North American Aviation gets to work immediately, securing a license to build Merlin engines in America through Packard Motor Company. They redesign the Mustang to accommodate the new engine. They call it the P-51B, and in December 1943, the first P-51B Mustangs arrive in England, ready for combat. But having a great plane is only half the battle. The Americans still need to figure out how to use it. Let me explain what's happening in the air war in 1943. The American strategy is to bomb Germany during the day while the British bomb at night. The idea is to destroy German industry and break their ability to make weapons, but daylight bombing is incredibly dangerous. German fighters swarm the bombers like angry hornets. The bombers have guns, but they're slow and not very maneuverable. They need fighter escorts. The problem is that American fighters can't fly far enough. The P-47 Thunderbolt is a good fighter, but it only has a range of about 475 miles. The P-38 Lightning can go further, but it has engine problems in the cold European weather. German fighters have figured out the pattern. They wait until the American escorts have to turn back, then they attack the bombers without mercy. In August 1943, the Americans launch a raid on Schweinfurt, a German city with ball-bearing factories. 230 bombers go in. 60 don't come back. That's a 26% loss rate in a single mission. It's catastrophic. Another raid in October produces similar losses. The Army Air Force has to temporarily stop deep penetration missions. They simply can't sustain these casualty rates. Morale is collapsing. Bomber crews know that statistically, they probably won't survive their required 25 missions. The generals are arguing about what to do. Some want to switch to night bombing like the British. Others want to wait until they can develop a longer-range fighter. But there's no time. The invasion of France is being planned for 1944. They need air superiority over Germany before D-Day. Without it, the invasion could fail. The pressure is enormous. Then someone realizes the Mustang might be the answer. With external fuel tanks, the P-51 can fly over 1,600 miles. That's enough to escort bombers all the way to Berlin and back. It's never been done before. No fighter has ever had that kind of range combined with that kind of performance. The decision is made. They're going to bet everything on the Mustang. The first P-51 Mustangs go to the 354th Fighter Group in December 1943. These pilots have been training stateside and they're excited but nervous. They've heard about the Mustang's early problems. They're not sure what they're getting. Then they see it. The plane is beautiful, but beauty doesn't win fights. They need to know if it can really do what everyone is saying. The first combat mission happens on December 1, 1943. It's an escort mission for bombers hitting targets in France. The Mustang pilots are cautious. They stay close to the bombers. They're learning how the plane handles in combat, and it handles beautifully. The Mustang is fast, it turns well, it climbs quickly. German fighters show up and the Mustangs engage. In that first battle, they shoot down several enemy aircraft without losing a single Mustang. The pilots land back in England with huge grins. This plane is the real deal. Word spreads fast. Other fighter groups want Mustangs immediately. By early 1944, more squadrons are converting from P-47s and P-38s to P-51s. Pilots who are flying the heavy, rugged Thunderbolt are amazed at how nimble the Mustang feels. It's like switching from a truck to a sports car. The visibility from the bubble canopy is incredible. You can see in every direction, which is critical in a dogfight. But the real test comes in March 1944, the first mission to Berlin. This is the big one. Berlin is deep in Germany, heavily defended and packed with fighters. It's the ultimate test of whether the Mustang can really protect bombers all the way to the most dangerous target in Europe. March 6, 1944. Over 700 American bombers take off heading for Berlin, and for the first time, they have P-51 Mustangs escorting them the entire way. The Mustang pilots are carrying extra fuel in drop tanks under their wings. Once they get close to enemy territory, they'll drop these tanks and be ready to fight. As the formation crosses into Germany, the radio chatter picks up. German controllers are directing fighters to intercept. The Luftwaffe knows this is a major raid, and they're throwing everything they have at it. Messerschmitt 109s and Focke-Wulf 190s climb to meet the Americans. These are experienced German pilots in excellent aircraft. This is going to be a real fight. The first engagements happen about 100 miles from Berlin. German fighters dive through the bomber formations, guns blazing, and the Mustangs are right there. They intercept the Germans before they can do serious damage. Dogfights break out across the sky. The Mustangs prove they can turn with the German fighters, they can dive with them, and most importantly, they can catch them. One P-51 pilot later describes the fight. He says it was chaos. Planes everywhere, twisting and turning, tracer rounds lighting up the sky. But the Mustang gives him confidence. He can chase down any German fighter. He can outturn them at high altitude where the Merlin engine really shines. The fight spreads across miles of sky. The bombers reach Berlin and drop their bombs, and the Mustangs are still there, still fighting off German interceptors. On the way home, the Germans try again. They're desperate. These American bombers are tearing apart their capital city and they need to stop them, but the Mustangs keep them at bay. Yes, some bombers are lost. War is brutal and some losses are inevitable, but the loss rate is manageable. More importantly, the bombers made it to Berlin. The psychological impact is huge. When the Mustangs land back in England, the ground crews count the bullet holes and tally the victories. The pilots are exhausted but elated. They've just done something that was supposed to be impossible. They flew to Berlin and back, fought the Luftwaffe over their own capital, and most of them made it home. The era of American air superiority has begun. After that first Berlin mission, the floodgates open. P-51s start escorting bombers everywhere. Munich, Vienna, Prague, targets deep in Poland. Places that were once considered unreachable are now getting hammered by American bombs, and the Mustangs are making it possible. The Germans are terrified of the Mustang. They call it der Gabelschwanzteufel when they see the P-38, but the P-51 they fear even more. It can show up anywhere. It's faster than most of their fighters. It can outclimb them, outdive them, and most frustratingly, it won't go away. German pilots are used to American escorts turning back, but the Mustang stays with the bombers all the way to the target and all the way home. Luftwaffe losses start mounting. Experienced German pilots are being shot down faster than they can be replaced. New pilots with minimal training are being thrown into combat, and they stand no chance against veteran American pilots in superior aircraft. The Germans try everything. They build faster fighters like the Me-262 jet, but it's too little too late, and there aren't enough of them. They try ramming attacks where German pilots deliberately crash into American bombers. It's suicidal and desperate. The P-51 kill ratio is incredible. For every Mustang lost in combat, American pilots are shooting down multiple German aircraft. Some P-51 pilots become aces, meaning they've shot down 5 or more enemy planes. Some become double aces or triple aces. There's a pilot named George Preddy who shoots down 26 enemy aircraft before he's killed by friendly fire in December 1944. Another pilot, Don Gentile, becomes so famous that he meets President Roosevelt. The Mustang isn't just winning fights in the air, it's also attacking targets on the ground. Pilots strafe trains, destroy trucks, blow up German aircraft sitting on airfields. They're hunting the Luftwaffe wherever they can find it. The goal isn't just to protect bombers anymore. The goal is to destroy the German Air Force completely. And it's working. But let's talk about what it's actually like to fly these missions. Because the P-51 might be an amazing machine, but the pilots are still young men, most of them in their early 20s, flying into deadly combat. A typical mission starts before dawn. You wake up and immediately check the mission board. If your name is on it, you're flying today. You eat breakfast, but your stomach is tight. You try not to think about the guys who didn't come back yesterday. You head to the briefing room where an intelligence officer pulls back a curtain to reveal a map. A piece of red string shows today's route. When the string goes deep into Germany, everyone groans. Long mission means more danger and more time sitting in a cramped cockpit. You grab your gear and walk to your plane. The ground crew has been working all night to get it ready. They trust you to bring their plane home in one piece. You climb into the cockpit. The space is tight. You're surrounded by instruments, switches, the gun sight in front of you, the stick between your knees. You strap in tight because if you get hit and need to bail out, you don't want to be tangled in loose straps. The engine starts with a roar. The Merlin has a distinctive sound, a deep, powerful growl. You taxi out and take off with your squadron. Dozens of Mustangs forming up, then joining hundreds of bombers. It's an incredible sight. The formations stretch for miles, but you can't enjoy the view for long. You need to stay alert. As you cross into Europe, the radio discipline tightens. You scan the sky constantly, looking for the sun glint off enemy canopies, looking for contrails, looking for anything unusual. Your eyes are always moving because the guy who doesn't see the enemy is the guy who gets killed. Then someone calls out bandits. Enemy fighters, your heart rate spikes. You see them, dark shapes diving down, your training takes over, you push the throttle forward, the Mustang accelerates, you position for a shot, everything happens fast. You're pulling GS, your vision narrowing from the blood draining from your head. You get tone on an enemy fighter, you press the trigger. The Mustang shudders as 650 caliber machine guns open up. You see your rounds hitting. The enemy plane smokes and falls away. But there's no time to celebrate. Another enemy on your tail. You brake hard, pulling the stick back and rolling. The Mustang responds instantly. You reverse the turn. Now you're on his tail. Another burst. Another kill. But you're low on ammo and low on fuel. You have to head home. You form up with surviving members of your squadron and start the long flight back to England. When you land, you're shaking from adrenaline. You climb out and see holes in your plane. Ground crew swarms to patch it up. You head to debriefing where you describe what you saw, what you shot, what you hit. Then you find out who didn't make it back. Maybe it's your roommate. Maybe it's your best friend. You don't have time to process it. Tomorrow you might fly again. This is the reality for P-51 pilots. Yes, they're flying the best fighter in the sky, but they're still human. still scared, still mourning their friends, still doing their job because someone has to. By the spring of 1944, the balance has shifted. The Americans are flying missions, and the Germans are losing dozens of fighters every day. The Luftwaffe is being bled dry. Fuel shortages mean German pilots can't train properly. The ones who do get into combat are often kids with 20 hours of flight time facing American veterans with hundreds of hours. April 1944 is particularly brutal for the Germans. The Americans launch Operation Argument, also called Big Week. The goal is to destroy German aircraft production. Wave after wave of bombers escorted by Mustangs hit factories across Germany. The Luftwaffe tries to stop them and gets slaughtered. In 1 week, the Germans lose over 350 fighters and nearly 100 pilots killed. These are losses they simply cannot replace. General Jimmy Doolittle, who commands the 8th Air Force, makes a critical decision. He orders his fighter pilots to be more aggressive. Don't just stay with the bombers. If you see German fighters on the ground, destroy them. If you see a German airfield, strafe it. Hunt them wherever they are. The Mustang pilots take this to heart. They start roaming across Germany looking for targets. German planes aren't safe even on the ground anymore. There's a famous incident in April 1944 where P-51s catch a formation of German fighters taking off from an airfield. The Germans are low, slow, and vulnerable. The Mustangs dive in and shoot down over a dozen planes in minutes. It's a massacre. Stories like this become common. The psychological impact on the remaining German pilots is devastating. They know that every time they take off, they might not come back. By June 1944, when D-Day happens, the Germans can barely contest the skies over France. Allied aircraft, including thousands of P-51s, control the air completely. German ground forces are getting pounded from above, and there's nothing the Luftwaffe can do about it. The fighter force that once dominated Europe is broken. And the Mustang is the primary reason why. Let's take a moment to appreciate what makes the P-51 so special from an engineering standpoint. Because this isn't just about the engine, although the Merlin is obviously critical. The entire aircraft is a masterpiece of design. First, that laminar flow wing I mentioned earlier. Most wings create turbulence as air flows over them, which creates drag and slows the plane down. The Mustang's wing is shaped so precisely that air flows smoothly over it with minimal turbulence. This gives it less drag and more speed with the same amount of engine power. It's incredibly difficult to manufacture because the tolerances are so tight, but North American Aviation figures it out. Second, the internal fuel tanks. The Mustang carries fuel behind the pilot in a fuselage tank. This is dangerous because if the tank gets hit, the pilot is sitting right in front of the explosion. But it also means the plane can carry a lot of fuel without external tanks. Combined with drop tanks, the Mustang has incredible range. Third, the cooling system. Remember how I said the radiator creates thrust instead of drag? Here's how that works. The radiator is in a duct under the fuselage. Air comes in, passes over the radiator to cool the engine, and as it heats up, it expands and accelerates out the back. This creates a tiny amount of thrust. It's called the Meredith effect after the engineer who figured it out. It doesn't sound like much, but every little bit helps. Fourth, the guns. 650 caliber machine guns, 3 in each wing. They're positioned far enough out that the bullets converge at about 300 yards, creating a concentrated cone of fire. When all 6 guns are firing, they're putting out about 100 rounds per second. That's devastating firepower. Later models carry even more ammunition. Fifth, the visibility. That bubble canopy gives the pilot an almost 360-degree view. In a dogfight, seeing your enemy is half the battle. German fighters like the Bf-109 have structural supports that block the pilot's view in critical directions. The Mustang pilot can see everything. This saves lives. Sixth, the handling. Pilots consistently report that the Mustang is easy to fly. It's stable, it's predictable, It doesn't have weird quirks that will kill you if you forget about them. This matters because pilots who are comfortable in their aircraft perform better in combat. The Mustang feels like it's part of you. All these factors combine to create a fighter that's greater than the sum of its parts. The Germans have individual aircraft that might be better in specific areas. The FW-190 is rugged and powerful. The late-model Bf-109s are fast. The Me-262 jet is revolutionary, but none of them match the overall package of capability, range, reliability, and ease of production that the Mustang offers. While the Mustang is dominating European skis, it's also fighting in other theaters. In the Pacific, long distances over water make range even more critical. The P-51 proves perfect for this. When American forces capture islands close enough to Japan, Mustangs start escorting B-29 bombers on raids against Japanese cities. The Japanese are facing the same nightmare the Germans faced. They can't stop the bombers because they can't get through the Mustang escorts. Japanese fighters are maneuverable, but most are lightly armed and not as fast as the P-51. American pilots rack up kills against Japanese aircraft just like they did against the Germans. There's a famous mission in April 1945 where P-51s escort B-29s to Japan and back, a round trip of over 1,500 miles, mostly over open ocean. If a Mustang's engine fails, the pilot is probably dead. There's nowhere to land and the water is cold, but the mission succeeds. The bombers hit their targets and most of the fighters make it home. It's another demonstration of the Mustang's incredible capabilities. When the atomic bombs are dropped in August 1945, ending the war, P-51s are flying escort for observation aircraft. The Mustang is there at the beginning of the air war in Europe, and it's there at the very end of the war in the Pacific. No other fighter can claim that distinction. When the war ends, the P-51 has compiled an incredible record. Over 15,000 are built. They shoot down nearly 5,000 enemy aircraft in Europe and hundreds more in the Pacific. The loss rate is remarkably low for such an aggressive combat role. The Mustang proves that air superiority is achievable if you have the right tool and the right tactics. But the Mustang story doesn't end in 1945. Unlike many World War II aircraft that are quickly retired, the Mustang keeps flying. During the Korean War, P-51s are pulled out of storage and used for ground attack missions. They're not the best fighters anymore because jets have taken over, but they're still excellent at bombing and strafing ground targets. Some Mustangs serve into the 1950s. Even more remarkably, dozens of countries buy Mustangs after the war. Israel uses them. Indonesia uses them. Many Latin American countries fly them. The Mustang becomes one of the most widely exported American military aircraft ever. Some air forces are flying P-51s well into the 1980s. That's 40 years after the plane first flew. Very few military aircraft have that kind of service life. Today, P-51s are prized warbirds. Private collectors restore them and fly them at air shows. The sound of that Merlin engine still draws crowds. People who were born decades after World War II still recognize the Mustang's distinctive shape. It's become an icon, a symbol of American air power and engineering excellence. The Mustang also influences future fighter design. The lessons learned about range, visibility, and balanced performance carry forward into the jet age. When American engineers design fighters in the 1950s and beyond, they remember what made the Mustang great. You can see echoes of Mustang design philosophy in aircraft like the F-86 Sabre and later fighters. I want to end by talking about the pilots again, because aircraft are machines but wars are fought by people. The men who flew P-51s in combat were volunteers. They didn't have to be there. They chose to serve. Many of them were barely old enough to drink. They came from farms in Iowa, cities like New York and Chicago, small towns across America. They went through training programs that were intense and demanding. Many washed out. The ones who made it earned their wings and shipped overseas. They joined squadrons where the life expectancy could be measured in missions. These pilots formed incredibly tight bonds. They depended on each other absolutely. Your wingman wasn't just your friend. He was the guy who would die to save you, and you would die to save him. The loss rate meant you were constantly meeting new guys as replacements for the ones who didn't come back. Some pilots became superstitious. Lucky scarves, lucky coins, rituals before missions. Anything to feel like you had some control over your fate. After the war, most of these men came home and tried to return to normal life. They got jobs, got married, raised families. Many never talked about their experiences. The horror and the fear and the grief were things they buried deep. Only decades later did some of them start opening up, often because historians were desperately trying to record their stories before it was too late. There are still a few World War II pilots alive today, but they're in their late 90s or older. Soon there won't be anyone left who actually flew these missions. All we'll have are their stories, their after-action reports, the gun camera footage, and the battered aircraft preserved in museums. But their legacy is secure. They proved that with courage, skill, and the right equipment, you can achieve things that seem impossible. They took a fighter plane that was initially rejected as worthless and turned it into the weapon that won the air war. They escorted thousands of bombers deep into enemy territory and brought most of them home. They destroyed the Luftwaffe and made D-Day possible. The P-51 Mustang won the war in the air, but it was the pilots who won it. The plane was just their tool. Oh, that's the story. The P-51 Mustang went from failure to legend in just a few years. It started as a rushed design with a bad engine that nobody wanted. One simple change, swapping in the Merlin engine, transformed it into the best fighter of the war. It gave American bombers the protection they needed to strike deep into Germany. It gave Allied pilots a weapon that could outfight anything the enemy had. And it gave the Allies control of the skies, which was essential for winning the war. The Mustang combined speed, range, firepower, handling, and reliability in a way no other fighter could match. It was exactly what was needed at exactly the right time. And in the hands of brave pilots, it changed history. Next time you see a P-51 at an air show, or in a museum, or in old footage, remember what it represents. It's not just a beautiful aircraft. It's a symbol of innovation under pressure, of taking a failure and turning it into a triumph, and of the young men who climbed into that cockpit knowing they might not come back, and did it anyway because their country needed them. That's the real story of the P-51 Mustang. The plane that saved the daylight bombing campaign, broke the Luftwaffe, and helped win World War II. Click subscribe if you want more stories like this.